A lone night's struggle. The sound of alarms echoed within the dimly lit drop bay of the exploration scout ship Thunderchild. As the ship emerged from FTL travel, it was immediately caught in a violent battle. The ship shook as the engines rolled into emergency maneuvers, throwing anything that wasn't secured onto the deck. The 2 rows of drop pods rattled violently. Tom, already suited in his Paladin Marquis power armor, braced himself as he heard the captain's voice cut through the chaos. "We've been engaged by an unknown force. Prepare to drop, now." Tom's heart raced. This was no routine mission. The ship was under attack, and they were light years away from the nearest human outpost. As the ship jolted again, Tom secured himself inside a drop pod, his mind racing with unanswered questions. Before he could process the situation, Captain Holden's voice returned, filled with grim urgency. "We found aliens, and they're not friendly. Get your asses to the drop pods. You may be the only ones to survive this. It's been an honor, gentlemen." The point defense cannons fired in the distance, vibrations echoing through the ship's hull. Tom's squad lead barked orders through the comms. "Tom, drop now. Don't wait for us." With a final glance at the status displays, Tom activated his pod. The doors behind it opened, and with a loud hiss, his pod was ejected into the cold vacuum of space. He could see the ship's coil gunfire one last round before the Thunderchild flipped away from view. Tom's eyes widened in horror as a laser beam sliced through the ship's hull, igniting it in a catastrophic explosion. "The Thunderchild is gone," Tom whispered, his voice barely audible over the din of alarms in his helmet. The pod tumbled through space, dodging debris from the now-destroyed ship. Tom's HUD flashed warnings as the AI system, Amor, tried to stabilize the pod's trajectory. "Damage to pod detected. Hard landing predicted," Amor informed him in its cold, robotic voice. Tom clenched his fists, trying to steady his breathing. The pod entered the atmosphere of a nearby planet, flames licking the outer shell as it plummeted toward the surface. Tom's vision blurred from the key forces, and just as the pod's thrusters fired to soften the landing, everything went black. The survivor's resolve. Tom awoke to darkness. His head throbbed, and his body ached from the rough landing. The pod's systems were damaged, but functional enough to keep him alive. As he checked the suit's diagnostics, Amor reported, "You were unconscious for 5 hours. Suit systems are green." Tom grunted as he released the pod's door seals and kicked it open. The cool night air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of unfamiliar vegetation. His helmet-mounted spotlights flickered on, revealing a dense forest. The trees and grass were eerily similar to those on Earth, illuminated under a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. Tom took a deep breath, trying to shake off the lingering dizziness. Amor scanned for life forms or anything of interest. The air responded, no signs of other drop pods in the area. This forest appears to be teeming with life, but no immediate threats detected. Tom nodded and began gathering his equipment from the pod. His rifle, sword, and sidearms were all intact, securely attached to his armored body. The 3D printer in the pod was damaged, but the one in his suit was still operational. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. As he stepped away from the wreckage, a wave of grief hit him. His friends, his comrades were gone. The Thunderchild was destroyed, and he was alone on an alien planet. Dropping to his knees, Tom let out a shaky breath. A tear rolled down his cheek, but he quickly wiped it away. "No time for that," he muttered to himself. "I have to keep going. I have to make sure they pay for this." Tom stood, his resolve hardening. He would survive, and he would avenge his fallen comrades. For now, his mission was simple: stay alive and gather information. He activated the suit's mapping software and began walking through the forest, his footsteps echoing softly in the night. An unlikely encounter. Hours passed as Tom trekked through the forest, guided by the suit's compass. The dense foliage began to thin out, and in the distance he spotted an amber glow. As he approached, the faint sounds of screaming reached his ears, growing louder with each step. Tom broke into a run, his armor-enhanced speed propelling him toward the source of the fire. A primitive-looking town came into view, its wooden structures engulfed in flames. The villagers, small, wolf-like creatures, were in a state of panic. Some tried to fight the fires with buckets of water, while others scrambled to rescue those trapped inside the burning huts. Tom's HUD highlighted a life form trapped in one of the huts. Without hesitation, he charged through the wall, smashing it to pieces with his armored fist. Inside, a young wolf-like creature, barely larger than a child, lay huddled in a corner, choking on the thick smoke. Tom scooped her up, cradling her gently in his armored arms. Her soot-covered face looked up at him, eyes wide with fear. "Are you a spirit from the gods?" She coughed out in a language Tom didn't understand, but the tone was unmistakable. As he carried her out of the burning hut, the villagers froze in shock, their eyes fixed on the towering armored figure. Tom carefully set the girl down by a stone wall, her small body trembling as she stared at him in awe. "Amor," Tom whispered, "can we get a translation going?" "Working on it, Knight. I'll need more data to create a full translation," the AI replied. Tom nodded and turned back to the task at hand. The fires needed to be contained, and the villagers needed help. His HUD highlighted the most critical areas, and Tom quickly set to work, ferrying water back and forth until the flames were under control. He didn't stop until every last ember was extinguished. The Knight's Oath. Tom awoke to the soft murmur of voices. Blinking away the remnants of sleep, he found himself surrounded by the wolf-like villagers. They kept their distance, their eyes filled with both awe and fear. The young girl he had saved stood among them, her gaze fixed on him with a mixture of curiosity and reverence. Tom slowly stood, towering over the small creatures. "Hey there," he said gently, holding his hands up to show he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you." The girl stepped forward, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Ship, you came from the sky." Tom nodded, realizing that the AA must have translated enough to communicate. "Yes, I came from the sky. My ship was attacked, and I'm the only survivor." Gasps rippled through the crowd. An older male, his fur streaked with gray, stepped forward. He seemed to be a leader, perhaps the village elder. "You saved my daughter, Ree, and our village. For that, we are grateful." Tom bowed his head respectfully. "It's my duty as a knight to protect those in need. But I must ask, who are you? What do you call yourselves?" The elder nodded, seeming to appreciate the gesture. "We are the Fae, and this is our home. But the sky demons have come again, bringing death and destruction. We do not know why they spared some of us, but we are thankful for your help." Tom listened intently, piecing together the situation. These sky demons were likely the same aliens that had destroyed the Thunder Child. He didn't know much about them, but it was clear they were a threat to both humanity and the Fae. "I don't know if the gods sent me," Tom replied, "but I'm here now, and I will do what I can to help. However, I have my own needs as well. My armor can only sustain me for so long. I need food, water, and a place to rest." The elder nodded solemnly. "You saved my daughter and our people. We will do what we can to provide for you, Sir Knight." Exhausted, Tom leaned against a cart, his eyes heavy with fatigue. The villagers kept their distance, watching him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. As sleep overtook him, Tom couldn't help but wonder what kind of world he had landed on, and what fate awaited him here. Tom smiled beneath his helmet. "Thank you. And one more thing, is there a custom in your culture for making agreements? Where I come from, we shake hands to seal a deal." The elder hesitated for a moment before extending his hand. "We can shake hands, as you call it." Tom grasped the elder's hand firmly, sealing the agreement. As he did, he felt a sense of purpose settle over him. He was no longer just a lost soldier on a distant planet. He was a knight, sworn to protect the innocent, and he would fulfill that oath, no matter the cost. Building trust. Over the following days, Tom became a familiar figure in the village. The Fae, initially wary of the towering armored stranger, began to accept him as one of their own. He helped rebuild homes, taught them basic defensive strategies, and even played with the village's children, his imposing armor becoming less intimidating as they grew accustomed to his presence. Ree, the young girl he had saved, seemed particularly fascinated by Tom. She followed him everywhere, watching his every move with wide eyes. Her curiosity reminded Tom of his younger sister back on Earth, and he found himself growing fond of her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, Ree approached Tom. She held out a small, intricately carved wooden figure, a replica of Tom in his armor. "I made this for you," she said shyly. Tom took the figure, examining it closely. It was a simple yet beautiful piece, clearly made with care. "Thank you, Ray," he said warmly. "This means a lot to me." Ree smiled brightly, her tail wagging slightly. "You're our protector now, right? Like in the stories." Tom chuckled, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Yeah, something like that." As he looked out at the village, now bustling with activity as the Fae worked together to rebuild their lives, Tom felt a sense of peace. He had lost so much, but here, among these simple, kind-hearted beings, he had found a new purpose. But the peace was fragile, and Tom knew it. The threat of the sky demons still loomed large, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they would return. And when they did, he would be ready. The looming threat. Tom was in the middle of reinforcing the village's defenses when the alarms in his helmet blared to life. "A more report," he commanded, his voice sharp. Multiple unidentified craft detected approaching from the east. "Based on speed and trajectory, they will arrive within the hour," Amor responded. Tom's heart pounded in his chest. "Alert the village, get everyone to safety." As the Alpha scrambled to gather their belongings and head to the fortified caves on the outskirts of the village, Tom hurriedly checked his weapons and armor systems. He had managed to repair some of the damage to his suit, but it was far from battle-ready. Still, it would have to do. Ree tugged at his arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Will you protect us, Sir Knight?" Tom knelt down, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I will, Ray. I won't let anything happen to you or your people." With a final nod, he stood and made his way to the edge of the village, where the first of the enemy craft were beginning to break through the atmosphere. They were sleek, black vessels, resembling a cross between a fighter jet and a serpent, their hulls glinting menacingly in the fading light. Tom raised his rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. He had no idea how many of them there were, or what kind of weapons they had, but he knew one thing: he wasn't going down without a fight. As the first wave of ships descended on the village, Tom opened fire, the sound of his rifle echoing through the trees. The battle had begun, and the fate of the village, and perhaps the entire planet, rested on his shoulders. The final stand. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning metal and ozone as the battle raged on. Tom moved with the precision of a seasoned warrior, his every move calculated and deliberate. His rifle barked, sending bolts of plasma into the enemy ranks, while his sword cleaved through the armored hulls of their ships. But for every enemy he took down, two more seemed to take their place. They were relentless, their numbers overwhelming, and Tom was growing tired. His armor was battered and smoking, and he could feel the strain of the battle wearing on him. "Amor, status report," he called out, panting heavily. "Armor integrity at 32%. Ammunition running low. Energy levels critical," the AI replied. Tom gritted his teeth. He couldn't keep this up much longer. He needed to end this, and fast. As he fought his way through the enemy forces, he caught sight of the village elder, standing defiantly at the entrance to the caves, a makeshift spear in hand. "You must go, Sir Knight. Save yourself. We will hold them off," the elder shouted. But Tom shook his head. "I'm not leaving you. I swore an oath to protect you, and I intend to keep it." With renewed determination, Tom charged forward, cutting a path through the enemy ranks. He could see the leader of the alien forces, a towering figure clad in dark, spiked armor, issuing commands from the back of the battlefield. Tom knew that if he could take out their leader, it might just be enough to turn the tide. Summoning the last of his strength, he sprinted toward the leader, his sword glowing with energy. The alien commander turned, its glowing eyes narrowing as it saw Tom approach. They clashed with a force that shook the ground beneath them. Sparks flew as their weapons met, and for a moment, it seemed as though they were evenly matched. But Tom's determination gave him an edge. With a final, mighty swing, he drove his sword through the commander's chest, impaling it through its armor. The alien let out a strangled cry before collapsing to the ground, its body convulsing as the life drained from it. Tom stood over the fallen enemy, breathing heavily as he looked out at the battlefield. The remaining aliens, seeing their leader defeated, hesitated for a moment before retreating, their ships lifting off and disappearing into the sky. Tom staggered back, his vision swimming as exhaustion finally caught up to him. He fell to his knees, his sword slipping from his grasp. He had done it. He had saved the village. As the villagers emerged from the caves, cheering and celebrating their victory, Ree ran to Tom's side, her eyes filled with tears of joy. "You did it, Sir Knight. You saved us." Tom smiled weakly, his vision beginning to blur. "I kept my promise," he murmured before collapsing into unconsciousness. The last thing he heard was the sound of Ree calling his name, her voice filled with hope and gratitude. And then there was only darkness.